Walter Hill's 1984 film, Streets of Fire, is not the best movie ever made. But every time I watch it, for about 20 minutes, I'm convinced that it is. The movie starts with such a rush of energy, such an astonishing combination of visuals and music, that watching it for the first time, you wonder, how is this not a beloved classic with a soundtrack everyone on Earth knows? It's got the neon noir look of 80s Michael Mann and Ridley Scott. All the streets are wet, reflecting the neon lights that illuminate the city. Every scene is full of smoke and fog and characters silhouetted by neon. Right as the movie begins, it announces itself as a rock and roll fable. And in a rapid-fire montage, it throws us into this nameless, retro-futuristic city, where crowds swarm to a theater to attend the hometown concert by a band with objectively the coolest name ever, Ellen Aim and the Attackers, who were led by Diane Lane, looking about as good as any human being has ever looked on screen. The band launches into an original song called Nowhere Fast, probably one of the top 20 songs ever written for a motion picture, a song that's both propulsive and operatic. The scene is all lit with these deep, saturated reds and blues. The camera knows exactly when to cut from a dramatic close-up to a sweeping, epic zoom lens on a crane. Halfway through the song, an army of evil bikers shows up, led by a young Willem Dafoe with his hair gelled up into this demonic sort of horn. He stands there in the crowd, only in silhouette, just watching through the mist. And in this one incredible shot, the lights slowly get brighter until his eyes are revealed for the first time. Then a riot breaks out mid-concert. The evil bikers kidnap Ellen Aim, and so a woman named Riva, who runs the local diner, writes a letter to her brother, Tom Cody, who's Ellen's ex-boyfriend, asking him to come home and rescue her. And as Tom arrives on the elevated train in this perfect action hero shot, we're off to the races. Despite how cool I just made the movie sound, it was actually not well received when it came out. And in one of the few positive reviews written at the time, Roger Ebert acknowledged that Streets of Fire does not live up to that opening. To be fair, almost nothing could. But I'm gonna disagree with Roger a bit, because while the next hour of the film has its share of problems, the final 10 minutes absolutely fulfill all the promise of the opening. Watching the end of the movie, I am brought right back to the feeling I got from the start. The problems fall away, and I'm left with what feels in the moment like a masterpiece. So how does this make any sense? Why do I think this very clearly flawed movie is so great? Why does it mean so much to me when most people have dismissed it as a failure for the past 40 years? And what is it about the perfect combination of music and imagery that can be so powerful?
Wait, are you actually asking me?
Yes, I genuinely need to know how this movie did it. Is it hypnosis, mind control, subliminal messages Jim Steinman put in the music?
Who's Jim Steinman? To be honest, Patrick, I don't really get the appeal. I mean, I watched the movie after you told me today's topic, and it's fine. It's a 3-star movie.
Look, normally that's a respectable score. We all know C's get degrees, but I would argue that SOF deserves at least a 4, maybe 4.5.
Maybe it's worth a second look. I did like that guy in the crazy suit and bow tie.
Rick Moranis.
Yeah, he was great. Has he been in anything else?
Yeah, you know, like Ghostbusters, Little Shop of Horrors, Honey, I Shrunk That. You know what, put a pin in that, because we're gonna come back to it.
Title sequence.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Right now, I can tell that some of you are a little uneasy, but don't worry, it's still me, Patrick Willems. I'm just wearing new glasses. I know we're 5 episodes into the new season, but we're still changing up the vibe a little bit. So now it's more like 1970s writer, less stuffy nerd. Also, for any of you weirdos who feel like buying empty Chinese takeout containers, we have a new drop up on our website, authenticyoutubeprops.com.
Ooh, are your old glasses available to buy?
No, that seems too dangerous. Like, what if those glasses made someone transform into me? Like, a boring version of the movie The Mask. Couldn't risk it. Anyway, the reason we're here today, Streets of Fire. So what is this movie anyway? Well, it all starts with Walter Hill, the director and co-writer. Hill had been writing and directing awesome action movies since the early 70s, usually about tough as nails, no bullshit, violent men. Movies like The Driver, The Long Riders, Southern Comfort, or The Getaway, which was directed by Sam Peckinpah. But for the purposes of this conversation, his 2 most important movies were The Warriors, his 1979 comic book-esque action movie about a violent gang war in New York City, which would later spawn a truly underrated video game, and 48 Hours, the buddy cop movie that launched Eddie Murphy as a movie star, which unfortunately still hasn't been made into a video game. 48 Hours was so successful that Hill's producers came to him and were like, dude, you can make anything you want now. What do you want to do? And Hill was like, I'm making goddamn Streets of Fire. Hill's concept for the movie was to basically combine everything he loved when he was a teenager into one movie. As he described it, Streets of Fire is, by design, comic book in orientation, mock epic in structure, movie heroic in acting style, operatic in visual style, and cowboy cliche in dialogue. In short, a rock and roll adventure where the leader of the pack steals the queen of the hop and Soldier Boy comes home to do something about it.
The queen of the hop has been kidnapped by the leader of the pack. And Soldier Boy comes home to do something about it.
So it's the plot of a Western in a neo-noir setting with the characters of a 1950s teen drama. As Toussaint Egan described it in a piece for Polygon, like Grease by way of Escape from New York. To use an analogy, it's like those Reese's peanut butter cups with extra pretzels and candy thrown in. At first, it seems like an insane mess, and then you try it, and then you're like, why wasn't it like this all along? This is so much better. Streets of Fire starts with its own version of A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far, Far Away. As the opening text here says, another time, another place. This is a movie where Willem Dafoe plays the evil leader of a biker gang who walks around in black leather overalls and no shirt, somehow out leather daddying the most leather daddy of them all, Darth Vader. And at the end, he fights the hero in a climactic fight in which they swing sledgehammers like lightsabers, forging the way for the wrench fight in Furious 7. This is a movie where a young Bill Paxton plays a bartender with a pompadour and a fucked up tooth, and Rick Moranis plays a slimy music manager named Billy Fish, who dresses like this. This is a movie full of exploding motorcycles and dramatic kisses in the rain, and it's all shot with tons of crazy color filters. Does this sound awesome? Yes, it does. I agree. And yet, back in 1984, critics mostly hated it, audiences didn't show up at all, but it oddly became a big hit in Japan, influencing multiple anime shows, including Megazone 23 and Bubblegum Crisis. I mean, come on, look at Willem Dafoe's hair, and now look at like half the characters in Yu Yu Hakusho.
All right, I'm done with my first rewatch.
Wait, Emma, how is that possible? Streets of Fire is an hour and a half long, and I've been talking for like 5 minutes.
I recently developed the skill to watch movies at 100 times speed. It unlocked when I had to watch every piece of Muppet Cinema in one sitting.
A classic episode.
How else do you think I watched Oliver Stone's The Doors 9 times in one night?
The math checks out.
You're right that there's fun stuff in this movie, and it looks cool, and the beginning is great, but I'm really not getting the masterpiece vibes you keep talking about. I mean, I have some problems with the middle.
Okay, yes, fine, I'll admit it, okay? The fact is, Streets of Fire is not actually the best movie ever made. It's a movie that, yeah, has its fair share of problems, and probably the biggest one, right there at the center of the film, is its lead actor, Michael Paré. Paré, who would of course later go on to play old, sad Josh Hartnett in The Virgin Suicides, and also a werewolf in the pretty okay werewolf movie Bad Moon. And I feel bad saying this because Paré seems like a good guy, and in every interview, he just seems so proud of this movie. And look, to give him credit, I have to admit that Paré looks fantastic. Like, look at his introduction here, standing up on the elevated train. The way he wears the trench coat, the way his hair flops over his face. Perfect, no notes. At one point in the movie, he wears suspenders with no shirt and actually pulls off somehow looking more like a young Tom Hardy than actual young Tom Hardy. But despite having an awesome look, he's giving a pretty flat, uncharismatic performance.
From now on, I'm just like you. I do what I'm good at, and I do it for money.
Streets of Fire was intended to be the first of a trilogy following the adventures of Tom Cody. And as much as I like this movie, at no point when I'm watching it do I go, wow, this guy here is our next Harrison Ford. Give me a whole franchise based around this guy. Streets of Fire is also a love story. And as good as Paré and Diane Lane look, especially when they're kissing in the rain, there is a real lack of chemistry there. I have a tough time believing these two were ever passionately in love. And the other big issue with Paré is that he just seems too old. See, part of Walter Hill's concept for the movie is that it's fundamentally about young people. He envisioned this city as being populated by no one over the age of 30, like a gritty version of the reality show Kid Nation. All of the characters are modeled on 1950s teen movie archetypes. It's basically about some greasers kidnapping the prom queen. It might as well be Beach Party with exploding motorcycles.
And sledgehammer fights.
Yes, yes. Also, just in case any execs from major studios are watching this, I can have a treatment for Beach Party but with sledgehammer fights finished and on your desk by Monday. Just let me know. But okay, back to Michael Paré. Even though he was only 25 when the film was shot, he looks like he's in his mid-30s. He seems like a full adult hanging out with a woman a decade younger than him, and so he throws off the whole idea of this being a story about youth. This is a movie that's basically about being in your early 20s and visiting your hometown and getting caught up in drama with your high school girlfriend. At least, it's supposed to be. Except that Paré reads as a guy who graduated from high school 15 years ago. Like if Matthew McConaughey from Dazed and Confused was the main action hero. That's what Tom Cody likes about these kidnapped pop stars. He gets older, they stay the same age. And what makes it more frustrating is when you learn that their first choice for the role, the person they initially offered it to, was Tom Cruise. This was Cruise, who had just become a movie star, who was coming off of Risky Business, who had to turn it down because he had just signed on to Ridley Scott's Legend. And with Cruise, it would be a completely different movie. Like there's one scene where a cop pulls Paré over and calls him a juvenile delinquent. And you're like, what are you talking about? This man looks older than you. But with Cruise, you'd believe it. Cruise had already been in The Outsiders with Diane Lane, so they have history and chemistry, and he had exactly the kind of charisma and cocky energy that this character needs. He feels like an angry young man, not a tired, seasoned veteran. Like, imagine Cruise and Willem Dafoe fighting in the streets over this girl, with, I will remind everyone, sledgehammers. That is the exact exaggerated high school drama energy that Hill was after. But I'm not gonna rag on Paré all day because he's not the movie's only problem. As striking as the burnt-out, retro-futuristic metropolis it's set in is, I wish the city were more clearly defined. Most of the movie is this odyssey through the unnamed city to rescue Ellen and bring her home, and considering this is made by the same guy who made The Warriors, I wish we understood the city the same way we do New York in that movie. During this middle stretch, I always have some questions, like what's the geography of the city? What are the different neighborhoods and districts they pass through? How long is the trip? To use a classic cliche, I wish the city was the other main character in the movie. The main area where much of the story is set looks so amazing, with the elevated train tracks and the theater and the old diner, and so I want the movie to go further. I want a complete list of the neighborhoods. I want some skyline shots. Give me a Google Maps eye view. Someone to tell me where the best places to find parking are. Look, I should also admit here that I've had this lifelong obsession with big, exaggerated, fantastical cities and movies, and I might be doing an episode on that later this season, so this might just be a me thing. It's also funny to hear that Walter Hill was influenced by the success of Flashdance and MTV when making the movie, because like, look at this guy. This is not the face of someone who puts on What a Feeling or Maniac and dances around his house. There's a sequence halfway through the movie that cross-cuts a montage of the characters traveling through the city with a music video of Ellen Aim performing the song Sorcerer, written for the film by, I kid you not, Stevie Nicks. It's an interesting stylistic experiment, like the music video is even shot on video, but it's just kind of an awkward fit and feels like Hill trying his hand at something he doesn't really understand. Looking at the rest of the movie, looking at how, like many of his films, the score is composed by Ry Cooder, it's clear that Walter Hill is just not an MTV guy. So during the middle hour of the movie, yeah, there are some awkward scenes, some bad line deliveries, it has its ups and downs, but then it gets to the last 15 minutes, and none of that matters.
Second rewatch in the books. It's starting to click, but the middle's still a bit of a slog even at 100 times speed. I mean, what's up with that scene with Ed Begley Jr.?
He's named Ben Gunn, after the character from Treasure Island. Just a weird dude covered in dirt who shows up and gives them information that they already had.
If they got her anywhere, they got her at Torpey's. Where are they keeping her? Torpey's, second floor.
But yeah, you're right. Some of the stuff was bugging me, and then at the end I didn't care. What's up with that?
Well, Emma, I have some theories. You see, I recently read Peter Biskind's book, Easy Rider's Raging Bulls, which I also brought up in the last episode. And I'm aware that a lot of this book should be taken with a grain of salt, but honestly, for this specific thing, historical accuracy doesn't really matter. Biskind writes that in the mid-70s, while making American Graffiti, George Lucas's filmmaking philosophy was as follows. The most important parts of a film are the first 5 minutes and the last 20. Everything in between is filler, and if there is enough action, no one will notice that the characters aren't particularly complex or that the acting is wooden. It's like he was describing Streets of Fire a full decade before it was made. Like, if we're following Lucas's rules, where it's these bookending 25 minutes that matter the most, then that would pretty much make Streets of Fire the greatest movie ever made. And look, use that quote to knock Lucas all you want, but also, did you make American Graffiti and Star Wars back to back? No? Well then, maybe he knows better than you do. The first 10 minutes of Streets of Fire, which I described earlier, are some of the best first 10 minutes of any movie ever. There's such a rush of energy, such assured filmmaking. It doesn't look or sound like any movie that had ever been made. And then the last 15, they are so spectacular, so sledgehamming, so sultry, it'll make you sizzle.
Wow, that should have been the tagline. Something about the combination of sultry and sledgehammer is just so evocative.
Right? Like, I'm positive if we got a time machine and went back to 1984 and changed the tagline, the movie would have been a bigger hit.
Maybe a fun plot for next season.
Maybe? If you're treating a movie as something purely experiential, then the opening and closing kind of are the most important parts. I've always been obsessed with opening scenes because it's such a huge, important decision for the filmmakers. How does a movie make its first impression? What does it do to grab you and hook you and introduce itself and its world and characters and get you to care and commit for the next 2 hours? So yeah, if you pull that off, then I think you've earned at least like an hour of goodwill from the audience. And then we skip ahead, an hour or so later, How does the movie wrap it up? What feeling does the movie want to send you out of the theater with? What is its closing argument, the grand finale? Well, in Streets of Fire, first there is the climactic sledgehammer fight between Perret and Willem Dafoe, an insane weapon choice that comes out of nowhere, but I guess that's just a thing in this world, and that rules. And then we shift over to the big final concert. First, the Sorels, the R&B group that the heroes meet on their journey, perform another great song written for the movie, I Can Dream About You, which became the soundtrack's biggest hit and reached number 6 on the Billboard chart. Backstage, Tom Cody says goodbye to Ellen. As much as they love each other, he knows their lives are heading in different directions. He tells her if she ever needs him, he'll be there. And then he kisses her one final time, as we hear in the background the Sorels sing, I Can Dream About You. And then Tom walks away, as Ellen takes the stage and proceeds to perform Tonight Is What It Means to Be Young, probably the greatest song ever written for a movie.
What about Over the Rainbow?
Okay, that is very good.
Or Part of Your World?
Also very good.
Or That Thing You Do?
Yeah.
Or How Silly Can You Get from Top Secret?
Emma, no one knows what that song is.
Or See You Again by Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth from Furious 7?
Shit, yeah, okay, that one's really good. Look, let's just say that Tonight Is What It Means to Be Young is one of the best songs ever written for a movie. Okay? Hey, don't you have PA stuff you should be doing instead of just sitting there disagreeing with me?
I could put on Hypnology's 80s neon setting.
Yeah, try that. Ooh, hey, that's pretty cool.
It also has an Everything is Covered in Rain feature, but I was told that using that would short circuit all the studio equipment.
That's a bummer. Just think of how cool this desk would look all covered in water, like Poochie being reflected in the puddles. Oh man. Anyway, like Nowhere Fast, the opening song, this is written by Jim Steinman. If you don't know Jim Steinman by name, I promise you are familiar with his music. Steinman was the long-haired, all-black leather-wearing, insane king of maximalist theatrical songs that sound like a fusion of musical theater, pop, and hard rock. He wrote all of Meat Loaf's biggest hits, including the album Bat Out of Hell and songs like I'd Do Anything for Love or Paradise by the Dashboard Lights. And then, of course, there are the songs like Total Eclipse of the Heart and It's All Coming Back to Me Now. So I think you get the idea. As my friend Trace Dean perfectly described it in a piece for Vulture a few years ago, legendary songwriter Jim Steinman wrote music meant to be performed in all caps. This is not to diminish the dynamism and range present in his oeuvre of soaring anthems, so much as to say that a Steinman track starts in caps lock and usually builds to caps lock bold, italic, underlined, or all three. Steinman never traded in subtlety, instead opting for opulent maximalism, often invoking imagery of werewolves riding motorcycles, vampire orgies, or smooching the ghost of your ex who was also a motorcycle riding werewolf. Before Streets of Fire, Steinman's previous major contribution to cinema was Holding Out for a Hero from Footloose. And while that song is used semi-ironically in Footloose, scoring a game of chicken with 2 tractors, there is nothing ironic about his music in Streets of Fire. This is deathly serious. The song begins with a note that sounds like a thunderclap, and just gets bigger from there. Hill's camera follows the microphone in a close-up as Ellen slowly and dramatically raises it to her mouth. He's shooting it like this is the most important moment of all time. On stage, Ellen is backlit, almost in silhouette, with smoke filling the air and the hands of the packed crowd swaying back and forth. As Tom Cody reaches the door, he stops and turns back to watch. It's pure drama. This is good shit. The song starts as an epic ballad, all dramatic pianos and those thunderclap sounds, with Ellen belting her heart out with lyrics about angels and choirs and being in love with a boy. It's like an end of Act 1 song from a Broadway musical, but turned into a rock anthem. And then, a minute into the song, the synths crank up, the drums gallop in, the colored lights switch on, and the song explodes into movement as the camera cranes up overhead. In classic Jim Steinman fashion, the song has a long, poetic title that doesn't really make sense, but that feels profound. So, you know, like Total Eclipse of the Heart, or I'd Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That. Tonight is what it means to be young? What does that actually mean? Well, like the lyrics in the song say, this is a colossal theatrical epic about being young and love feeling apocalyptic. The lyrics are about angels and holy choirs, the earth shaking and looking down from the sun at the rim of the world. It is a song that immediately crystallizes everything Walter Hill set out to do with this movie that announced itself up front as a rock and roll fable. It's big and loud and shiny and exciting. It is a song fit for a movie with car chases and sledgehammer fights and spectacular kisses in the pouring rain. That is also at its core about being young and full of emotions that feel like life or death. When I watch this final performance, the problems in the past hour of the movie melt away, and I see the masterpiece that it almost is. It's worth noting here that Walter Hill, who spent his career making action movies and westerns, had never shot musical performances before, and yet this showed that he could do it better than almost anyone. He knows exactly when to cut, what angles to cut to at every moment, and how to move the camera to perfectly capture the energy of the music. Michael Paré doesn't speak during this performance, but he does his best work of the movie. Standing there in the doorway, turning back and watching Ellen perform, with half his face in shadow, you forget that he looks too old, that he doesn't really have much romantic chemistry with Diane Lane. Because here, he looks iconic, his expression one of longing as he watches what he's leaving behind. For me, the most emotional moment in the movie comes when Ellen sings, "It's Gonna Be Over Before You Know It's Begun." And right here, Tom finally turns and walks out the door. The film cuts to Ellen as she turns her head away for a second, like she can't bear to see him leave. And then, a second later, she turns back to face the crowd, because this is her life now, singing this song for her fans. As Tom leaves, Ellen is joined on stage by the Sorrells. This is her world now, and Tom knows that he doesn't belong. But he'll be back, if she ever needs him to duel someone with sledgehammers again. Tom turning and walking out the door here is a reminder that, among many other things, Streets of Fire is a Western, and this is its youthful, melodramatic riff on The Searchers. To me, that's cinema.
Patrick.
Sorry. So, as much as there are plenty of good lines in the movie,
Listen, Skirt, let me make it simple for you. Take a hike.
I want to nail that son of a bitch's head to the sidewalk under that marquee that says Ellen Aim on it.
Listen, shithead. You give him some of your money, or I'll give him some of your money.
it's at its best here with no dialogue, just visuals and music. This song, like basically everything Steinman ever wrote, is operatic. It's Wagner as pop music. At one point in the song, it explodes into a synth breakdown with what sounds like a choir in the background, as the lights flash on and off to the rhythm, and the scene essentially becomes a dream ballet. It makes you realize the ultimate version of this movie is a rock opera, with Steinman songs throughout. Maybe there's some alternate universe where that version exists. Hopefully, the same universe where Tom Cruise played Tom Cody. You know, with all this alternate universe talk lately, you might be thinking that this season is building to like a finale where, I don't know, Chloe and I travel the multiverse to see all these different versions of movies. That sounds like a lot of fun. It also sounds way outside of our budget. Sorry, Anyway, the crazy thing about the end of Streets of Fire is that this song was never actually supposed to be in the movie. The original ending, that was actually filmed, had Ellen Aim performing a cover of the Bruce Springsteen song, you guessed it, but then, after the scene was shot, Springsteen wouldn't give his permission to use the song. Now look, Streets of Fire is a great song, but it has a completely different vibe. It's slower, it's more downbeat, and it's much sadder. The lyrics, with lines like, "Now I'm wandering, the loser down the track, and I'm lying, but babe, I can't go back," could definitely be applied to Tom Cody. But it also just makes the ending way more of a bummer. So when they were no longer legally able to use the original ending, they tried just ending it on the Sorrells performance. And that song is good, but it's also a lot less dramatic, and it doesn't give the catharsis of seeing Diane Lane sing her heart out while the guy she loves walks away. So the studio, because this was the 1980s and every movie needed a big accompanying soundtrack full of original songs, requested they get a new song for the ending. And so months after production had wrapped, they went back to Jim Steinman to ask him to write a closing number. Then they constructed a new set for the theater, put a wig on Diane Lane since she had cut her hair for filming Francis Ford Coppola's Rumblefish, and shot the new ending. And it's crazy to me to imagine the movie ending any other way, because this reshot ending is the best part of the movie. It's one of my favorite parts of any movie. Roger Ebert said the movie doesn't live up to its opening, but I think here it does exactly that. At least in these final 15 minutes, it's exactly what the opening scenes promised. The music, the aesthetics, the action, the drama, the big youthful emotions, it's all right there. As I'm talking, I'm realizing that this sounds very close to what I described a year ago as a vibes movie. You know, the whole thing of don't try to understand it, feel it. Like technically on the Vibes score chart I released, this doesn't score all that high. It's not glamorous, it's not confusing, it never leaves the city, let alone the country. But in each case, it's an action movie where the plot recedes into the background, and it becomes this mixture of visuals and music that fuse together to create a meaning that transcends the script, that becomes a profound work of pure cinema. So maybe we need like a set of bonus points on the vibe scale. I don't know, I'll work on it and get back to you. I realize how out of place this video seems on the internet. Online film discourse, especially of the video variety, is so much about this extreme binary. Thumbnails that announce that a movie sucks, or that it's an unmitigated disaster, or an unqualified triumph. But that is a boring way to look at movies, because these things are complicated. Sometimes movies are qualified triumphs, or as I like to call them, triasterumphs. Take something like Gore Verbinski's The Lone Ranger, a truly canceled, cursed movie from a brilliant filmmaker who is making almost all of the wrong decisions here, including way more regrettable casting than Streets of Fire. But then, it has a third-act action finale that is so astonishingly brilliant that it almost redeems the entire thing. Almost. And I'm one of those weirdos whose favorite Indiana Jones movie is Temple of Doom. I know I'm fully aware that it's less perfect than Raiders. I know it has some problems, but that first 20 minutes and that last 20 minutes are so transcendent, and that's what really puts it over the top for me. And so with Streets of Fire, yes, I see its flaws. I acknowledge them. I'm not going to really try to convince you that this is the best movie ever made. I don't really believe that. What I'm telling you is that when I watch it for about 20 minutes, it feels like I can fly. Like anything is possible.
Patrick, I'm mostly with you here, but you gotta pull back a bit.
Yep. That's a good call. So, Streets of Fire is not a movie for everyone. I've shown it to plenty of people who responded, "Patrick, what's wrong with you? This movie is fucking dumb." It's not surprising that this was a flop with audiences and critics, who in 1984 were way more excited about Purple Rain, another great movie that actually is really like weirdly similar in a lot of ways, and also is bookended by incredible performances of some of the best songs ever recorded. So Streets of Fire is kind of like if Hill's earlier film, The Warriors, was a musical, which was not what people in the 80s were into. But right now, Lin-Manuel Miranda is working on a musical adaptation of The Warriors. And so, maybe this is evidence that Streets of Fire's time is finally here, and it was just made 40 years too early. One of the joys of going to a 70mm screening of Streets of Fire, other than seeing those last 10 minutes on a huge screen with the music cranked as loud as it will go, is to confirm that it's not just you, that other people feel the same way. They see what you see. This movie might not be for everyone, but it is very much for certain people. So Emma, what do you say? Have I sold you on the movie? Can I now count you among the ranks of those of us who walk the streets of fire?
Hey, next film you want me to go to bat for, you know where to find me.
Here in the studio? Because this is where you work?
That's right. I knew you were sharper than you looked.
Wait, Emma, where are you going? We still have to shoot the ad read? Hey, don't you Tom Cody exit on me.
Sorry, Patrick. Can't hear you over all these dramatic shadows.
Well, all alone again. I guess I'm just gonna have to do the best damn ad read ever, all on my own. Let's go. So earlier, I threw out the big hyperbolic statement that Tonight Is What It Means to Be Young is the greatest song in movie history, or at least one of them. And after Emma pushed back on that, I started thinking about it a little bit. And then I thought more about it, and I kept going and going, and before I knew it, I had shot a whole additional video in which I ranked what are, to me, the 25 best movie songs of all time. So that is an entire additional video that is half an hour long, and right now you can watch it exclusively on Nebula. If you've watched this channel before, you probably know that Nebula is the indie streaming platform that recently made Fast Company's list of the most innovative companies in video. I helped develop Nebula, and it's co-owned by a ton of creators, including me. So if you watch this channel and you haven't joined Nebula yet, you should know that there is so much extra exclusive stuff that you haven't seen. This season, we've released bonus episodes about Muppets, Mortal Kombat, and Jaws 2 that are only on Nebula. Our season finale from last season, only on Nebula, was a full 1960s-style musical holiday special that is also the only video I've made about Star Wars in 4 years. And of course, Nebula is the only place to watch our feature-length movie, Night of the Coconut. And speaking of movies, this is the year that Nebula is really moving into narrative film. Identities, the new sci-fi movie from Jesse Gender, premieres next month. Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend from Abigail Thorne is about to start production. And my movie, The Dinner Plan, will be coming later this year, and I'm very excited about it. So if you want to watch any of the things I just mentioned, Nebula is the only place to watch them. And if you sign up here, or use this QR code, you can get a full year of Nebula for 40% off. So it comes out to only $2.50 a month. And using this code also directly supports this channel, helps us increase our budgets, make our videos more ambitious, and it also benefits the budget of my movie. So I think that's awesome for all of us, and that's all for now. Thanks for watching.